Hello and welcome to From the Couch Sports Talk Radio. It is Tuesday, Roundtable Football. With me tonight right now are Eric and David. Come on in, boys. How y'all doing tonight? Oh, and Jeffrey's on. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's up? Eric, stop doing that because you don't have it. Like, this is nice. That shit like touching your chin. I mean, David can do that. But none of y'all, unless Sean goes and gets his paper.
Look at Eric starting to grow the pointy little thing down there.
He's trying.
Growing that
This
peach.
This is the morning beard.
Yeah.
See that? That's the morning beard. Then then I have the evening wear beard.
That's right. You gotta have it. Man, I cracked my damn head open, man. Jesus.
Man.
At the gas station.
It's not good.
No. I had put a whole Band-Aid on my head. But I'm thankful because I'm privileged. Band-Aids match my skin tone.
How did you cut your head at a gas station?
Well, inside the bathroom, they created this build-out for the urinal had brown paper bag or brown plastic bag over, so you had to go in the shitter place. But they created this cutout room. So the ceiling's like 10 feet tall, but they created this fucking midget level. Like Eric could walk in freely, right? Me, I have to limbo underneath that bitch, and I didn't see it because I was talking to Numbnuts over there with the C on his shirt, and I was talking like this, and I blasted, man, and then I had to go yell at the attendant and tell him that I'm going to sue him, but I'll settle out of court for $1 million, right?
We know how you cut your head in the men's room. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm here in the men's room. I'm here in the urinal thing, and I'm going. It's my mind is in a completely different direction.
I'm gonna share. I'm gonna go and get the video. I'm gonna go take a video of the place so you can see what I'm talking about. Because I mean, I can. I thought I did a pretty. Like, you guys are like fucking Eric on Facebook. I say something and you automatically go to some other place, and I'm like, what are you all even talking about? I was very descriptive of what I said. They built a shitter room that was short. I walked in and I blasted my head on the frame of the thing. Pretty easy, self-explanatory. I'm sure I could have someone draw me a picture of this and they'd be like, oh, I got what he's saying. Now, Eric, on the other hand, I could say the same thing and Eric would be like, well, he was walking through the jungle and there was this Ben Roethlisberger rapist guy, and then he had to run from the rapist to get to the out-of-bounds marker that the 2 feet were not on bounds, and Jesse James caught the ball, but he didn't. Anyway,
what's cute is you never answer or respond in a debate. If you don't like,
I don't answer. Listen, hold on. So, Sean, this is going to go off the rails for 30 seconds, right? And I won't prolong this. I did answer, but your conversation goes like a complete opposite direction. Look, basics of understanding are implied. So, does more than one day affect chemistry? It's fucking yes. The answer is yes. But that wasn't the question that you asked that started the conversation to begin with. So hold on, sweetheart. So hold on. Come inside. Come here.
Oh, I thought you were me.
Your tooth fell out. Look at it. Come here. Hey! Look at it.
That is awesome.
Let me see. Is it bleeding all over? No, look at you. Okay, how much?
Remember, the Tooth Fairy leaves $100 bill.
Kennedy, make sure the Tooth Fairy goes to the bank.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah,
$100 per
awesome.
tooth.
Wow. Okay.
You gotta tell that Tooth Fairy inflation is a pain in the butt.
Tell everybody.
Inflation.
Thank you.
All right.
I have my hair too.
All right. Go show Grandma. Grandma's gonna be so happy. But close my door, please. That could be interrupted.
That's awesome.
Okay. It is great. All right.
That was the best 30 seconds we've ever had on this show.
There you
And
go.
that's
Did you pull it out or did it
saying.
just fall out?
I pulled it out.
You pulled it out. You're so brave. I wish you had called me. I would have videotaped it. Good girl. Awesome. You're my hero. All right. So listen.
Damn.
That was great, right, Sean? I thought that was pretty cool. We caught that live
that
on
was
TV,
awesome.
so we get to share the first tooth. I wish I could have seen the video. Listen, I recorded her for an hour trying to pull her tooth out the other night in the middle of the night, which was crazy because she woke me up, but it didn't work out. Anyhow, look, the conversation, just so y'all are tracking, started off with some random dude talking about Russell Wilson, that they have Russell Wilson now and not Kenny Pickett. And there was conversation. All I said was, isn't there a red flag because the dude walked away from it, or the team let him walk away with $85 million? That's all I asked. Eric obviously replied to that and then started going down this path of, great leadership and all this stuff. And all I said to him was, you act as though Russell Wilson is a plug and play quarterback. We lost one guy on offense, and all of a sudden we're like this horrible team and have to grow. But your team gets you can say 70. The bottom line is it's a center and 2 receivers. I don't give 2 shits. But the core of the team is there. You've got 2 new offensive linemen, 3 new receivers, and a quarterback, and a brand new offensive coordinator. My point was, I can hear what you're saying in April. What? What?
Am I allowed to retort, or do I?
You'll be able to retort.
Retort, but nothing I'm saying is not factual. Go ahead, say what you say.
No, what we were arguing about is I asked you. You said, and what we're talking about is you're like, it's going to be really hard for him to learn a new offensive system. And my retort to you was, well, Buffalo was better, and they did it in a week. They have a whole offseason to figure it out. So there's no. And
I said simply, apples and oranges. And that was something that, as smart as you are, that was something that you couldn't wrap around your head. Apples and oranges. Brady was part of the scheme in which they'd been in with the year before and the year of. And all they did was insert some plays that he's already been part of that program. You're bringing in a new offensive coordinator who wasn't part of the program midseason. A new quarter. I mean, go be upset, but the reality is nothing that I said was faulty. You keep saying, was there more? Sure, but you're not the only team that's sitting there with your entire new offense besides your 2 running backs and George Pickens, right? Your 3 offensive linemen, your brand new offensive coordinator, your brand new 2 quarterbacks. That's brand new. Yes, they're starting to work now, but you're telling me that a Josh Allen team followed by the same offensive coordinator with the same scheme, inserting 2 receivers and an offensive lineman is so much fucking more difficult than what Pittsburgh's going through, because somehow, some way, Russell Wilson has come in and is a fucking saving grace, and they'll do some ballerina, fucking aerobatic, nautical, underwater synchronized swimming bullshit, and all of a sudden they're going to be a great team. Get the fuck out of here. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It can make sense that it'll take months to get right. I'm okay with that. But it's no different than any other fucking team that's starting over.
Okay. I'm eventually, one time on this show, I'm going full Dumb and Dumber. I'm gonna be like, guys.
Here, let me say this.
Oh God.
Like I said, I've always said, you can have the best free agency, the best draft. You can tell me about this guy is great. They brought him in, Super Bowl, 12-5, all these wonderful stats, all these wonderful things based on your players. I've said it. You do not win games in March and April. You win them from September to January. Okay? So I don't care if the Bills lost 3 offensive players. They've gained 4 offensive players. Do they have to work into the system? Yes. But Joe Brady was there last year. Joe Brady was there part of the year before as Josh Allen's quarterback coach. Been in the system, basically developed the system and made a system based on Josh Allen's strengths and what Josh Allen does. And he catered to that system. In Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith has to come in and implement an entire system with Russell. Yes, he does. When did Russell Wilson play with Arthur Smith? Tell me, please. Tell me.
You made my point to what Jeff said exactly. He went around, he catered to Josh Allen, he built around Josh Allen, and they had input together and they were able to work. It's the same thing. Hey Russ, what works? What doesn't work? What terminology do you
but the system was already there. You're muted, Jeff. Unmute Jeff. Unmute Jeff.
Listen, again, not the same thing. And the fact that you can't see the logic in this is baffling to me. Listen, the dude was part of the system. He did. Listen, hold on. Brady didn't come in after old boy was fired and then revamp a system, completely redo the playbook, and then say, okay, here we go. It was the same fucking playbook. All he did was say, I'm going to insert these plays to this playbook that we already have. I'm not inventing shit. And he did, and he played it. What you have right now is a brand new dude. That's the offensive coordinator with a new system that isn't brought from Canada or the dude who replaced Canada. It's his own shit. And yes, Russell Wilson will have some time and some input. I get it. But guess what? The offensive line guys that were there last year don't get the input. They have to operate. Oh, by the way, the 3 rookies that will be on that line, they have to learn it. So it could be 7. It's 1. It's not, we have 1 new dude and we're fucking going to go backwards. You have 2 new dudes and a shitty 3 that were there last year. But the one guy came in and we were the top 5 team in the last 3 games. Who gives 2 fucks? Bottom line is you're having a dude that just got hired 2 months ago. And yes, he has an offseason to work on some shit. We have a dude who's been there for 2 years, who's working on some shit with the same Kincaid, Knox, Cook, Shakur, and, oh, by the way, the fucking quarterback. So at the end of the day, your team is fine. They're all learning new shit. So it's really cool. But we are going because we just it's just a fucking apples and oranges debate. It's a silly conversation because it's not even logical. It's not the same. Yes, if we had hired a new offensive coordinator, Eric, in February or March, I'd be like, yeah, it's the same shit. We got a dude coming from Tennessee. We got a guy coming from LA that wasn't part of our system and our team has to learn. It'd be tough. So what I'm saying to you, Russell Wilson isn't some dude. He's not bringing his former OCs for the last 3 teams he was on. He's not bringing anybody that he's familiar with. He's learning some new shit. And yes, he will have say in what he likes. But Arthur Smith, none of that team is in the Arthur Smith. So it's like the fact that I've said it 3 times and the fact that you're not like, oh, I understand what you're saying. It's fucking ridiculous to me because it's very obvious. Like this is logic at like Logic 101. Your shit is fandom, and I think Pittsburgh is just a great team. And no matter what the fuck they do, they're 7 steps ahead. Well, I'll tell you real quick, and I'm gonna let Sean take over the show, and I'm gonna put myself on mute. Last year, got it. You picked the record. Buffalo is 1 game better, and all that shit matters, right? And it's really cool. But when there's differing of schedules and all that stuff's great, you know how you tell who's the better team? The fucking head-to-head matchup in which you got your ass whooped by. That's where we sit right now, and that's what the closest thing is to reality. Yeah. Now, come September, let's start the season again. Right now, I couldn't give 2 shits.
All righty. So we got that almost out of the way. Eric, I am going to allow you 60 seconds to reply. Then we're moving on to the draft recap. Eric, speak your mind, sir.
That was really entertaining, and you do care because you show passion in your retort, Jeff. So I can tell by your body language that you do care, and it's okay to care. It's okay to share those feelings. And so ideally, it has your system worked, and I can give you examples of offensive coordinators coming in, even in Kansas City, after changing the system a little bit and getting the input of Patrick Mahomes and being better. So ideally, your offense changed a lot because you went after Brady came in. Did you not run the ball 60% of the time or 55% of the time? Did you not put the ball in James Cook's hands? I think James Cook had the ball a lot, and I think you ran the ball a lot, and I think you started winning the game because it wasn't just on Josh Allen. So the philosophy did change there within a week. But this was my 60 seconds to share. We can agree to disagree, and we can move on with the show. I'm
telling David to give you. I'm letting you talk because David, let him. That's all I'm saying.
I am.
Continue.
So ideally, the system will be based with the quarterback's input, and the quarterback will have the exact offense, and he'll have it down playbook wise as a veteran quarterback. By now, it's his playbook, and it'll be his system because that's why you bring a 35-year-old quarterback in. You let him run what system's comfortable for him to pick it up and run with. So I guess we will see in September, and there's nothing wrong with having hope in April. That's the point of each one of us being a fan here, which, by the way, Sean, your Jets are going to win the AFC East and the Super Bowl anyways because they're the best team right now, as I think so anyways, moving forward.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Suck it
Sean,
up to the host.
that was really nice. And I just want to say this. I like how you say I care and I'm a fan, and you gave your insight onto my logic and all that good stuff. And then I like how you spit no fucking factual information for the rest of the time you talked, except for the fact that maybe the Jets win the Super Bowl, which would be a guess. The reality is not a single fucking offensive thing changed in Kansas City because Andy Reid was the coach and the offensive coordinator, which was proven because when the offensive coordinator went to Washington, guess what they still did? The same fucking offense. That's number one. Number two, 60% of the time you think Buffalo handed the ball when Brady came there, go do your math and pretend again like you know the Buffalo Bills, because at the end of the day, it was not 60% of the time. The ball was not handed off. You want to talk balance? It might have been more balanced, not over-balanced to the run. If it's anything above, it's passing more, not running. But it wasn't nearly as lopsided as it was. More balanced, sure. Never once 65%. The only game in which it was more than was the Dallas Cowboys game. But I know, Eric, you know that shit because that's the game you're referencing. By the way, the game that Buffalo was going to get beat by 30 points, but I think we won by 35. But neither here nor there with all your knowledge. I love it. So as we speak facts, let's just be really logical and speak facts. And I do appreciate your fandom, and that's called fucking psychotic. My fandom is the game when it's played and when it's over. And then guess what I do? I watch my daughter pull her tooth out of her mouth, or I go and do some other shit that's relevant to me in life, because guess what I don't do? Give two fucks about what the outcome is. Yes, I want to win, but guess what I'm not doing? I'm not playing a game.
So Eric, let me ask, because Katie asked the question, does Pittsburgh explore 12 personnel this year?
Yes. I mean, as simple as that. That's what the personnel is built. Excuse me, I got dry mouth tonight. That's what the personnel is built for. You've got a lack of depth at wide receiver. You've got a bunch of good running backs and a bunch of good tight ends. So they're probably going to run the ball quite a bit. And by the way, I said 55% with James Cook, by the way, Jeff. So we keep jumping the number up and up.
And again, I look at I understand that. And here was the reason why Ken Dorsey had to go. And this is why Joe Brady was hired, brought in, and then retained. Because the fact is, Joe Brady understood what we were lacking. And it wasn't about whether Josh Allen wanted to throw the ball 100 times or not. It was about the fact that when Joe Brady came into that offense as the coordinator, he utilized his running backs, he utilized the tight ends, he utilized the personnel that we had to exploit defenses that would allow Josh Allen to make plays. If you look at when Joe Brady came in, Josh Allen made less mistakes because he took the options that were given to him that Joe Brady opened up for him. And again, I am not going to sit here today and say that Arthur Smith is not a great hire. I'm not going to sit here today and say that Russell Wilson can't have a great season. But I'm also not going to sit here today and say that Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. They're going to win the AFC North because, again, 3 years ago or 2 years ago when I said, wait, hold on, let me finish. You had your talk, but when I sat there and said Tyreek Hill was going to be the death of Patrick Mahomes, I was proven wrong. I will never crown a winner in April or March. The games are played between September and January, and a lot of things can happen in that time period. Injuries can happen. Teams can crap. So I'm not going to say one thing or another. It's great to have the debate about all these wonderful things. In September through January, we'll discuss it. Go ahead, Jeff. What?
No, move on.
No, he's just telling you to move it along.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So real quick, David, show your New Jersey. I know you're proud of it.
Average Joes. We're going to be talking dodgeball, man. Peter LaFleur, baby. That's it. We're going to be talking some dodgeball pretty soon. I think we should have a game between Jeff and Eric just to see who beat the shit out of each other with them red rubber balls.
Oh, my God. Just if we get those balls from like the 1970s, the ones when you hit them with doing, I would pay money to see that. All right. So,
hey, Eric, what it sounds like is that Sean and David want to see you abused. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt you. So we'll use some other balls.
All I picture is Adam Sandler and Billy Madison, and Jeff, you are Adam Sandler. And I'm sorry, Eric. You're like the little fat
Called
kid
the
that gets
shit
bumped
too.
off.
Now
All
you're
right.
all going to die.
Doyle does not rule in this case. So,
You can
okay.
dodge
So
the
let's
wrench,
move on.
you can't dodge the ball.
We're going to move on to the draft. All right.
Sure.
So I do have a little graphic up, but don't put it up yet. I just want to the draft. Like a lot of people say, oh, they got grades, A, B, C, D, whatever. I am sorry, but the draft is a lot like eating at Applebee's. You can pick whatever you want off the menu, but you never know what shit's going to come out.
Sure.
So Applebee's, the bar restaurant of the NFL. People, I see all the time, Jeff, like the Jets a couple years ago, they drafted Mekhi Becton. Oh, they got an A plus on that. And he turned out to be a dud.
Sure.
So everybody, I do want you to get happy about your draft. I do want you to get excited and how your team is going to evolve. But just remember, until these guys actually hit the field, until they put in that work, you don't know what you got yet. And playing in college and playing the pros are two different things. You have some people who are just huge and they just throw people around in college, but then you get to the pros and you're dealing with real big boys here. And, you have to.
I think the misconception of the draft grades, right? And I agree with you, Sean, by the way. I think that, but I think from a fan's perspective, we should kind of understand the draft grades, right? And what I mean by that is I don't necessarily think that the grades are based on what they're going to do for the potential of their NFL career. I think when you look at the grades of the draft, all these players are rated at some point throughout the process, right? And I know Mel Kiper, and we bust balls on some of these analysts, but they grade these folks and they all have these numbers next to them. And most teams will agree with those numbers, right? And as they get to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round, it gets a little bit more finicky. But I think, and Eric would probably be able to answer this more direct than me as far as facts versus my thought, because this is the thought I'm having. I think the draft is graded based on needs of team and the ratings of what the players are coming out of college. So that draft is rated for that day based on, I have these needs. These players are rated at this level. It fits for the draft. As far as the comprehensive draft grade, the realistic grade, well, I don't think anybody would think that that's a real grade until you look at how they play and how it reflects on the field. Because I mean, that's just projected stuff. It's not based on factual information, right? Because some of these players won't even see the field ever. Some will play for a short period before they're injured. So you don't really know how that 2024, 2023 draft will really play out until it's actually 2, 3, 4 years later for that team. That's my thought. I might be wrong.
Right.
Dave.
Well, and again, Jeff, I think you're right. I think you're pretty much spot on, because the fact is the draft grades brought on by all of these CBS, NFL, PFF, PFN, all those are their draft grades based on how they have the team, the player graded, where they were drafted, whether they were to them a fourth round that went in the second round type of pick. We talked about, I actually rewatched the draft from 2 years ago or last year, whatever it was, when the, New England took Colt, or that Strange guy from Colton Strange or whatever. Well, everybody had a fourth round draft grade on him, and everybody was laughing at the Patriots. Turned into a pretty decent offensive lineman that's doing a decent job in New England. So again, here are the grades that are given by these draft gurus, Mel Kiper and all them. And the fact is they get 1/5 of the information on a player. They get 1/5 of the information on how does the player fit the offense? How does the player, Cole Strange. Thank you, KD. How does the player learn and retain information? Is he a fast learner? Is he a slow learner? What type of offense, defense is he playing in? Is it complex, or all these things? So those are the things that general managers and scouts and all that stuff have privy to, that none of these people outside of the inside workings of an NFL team have. So they look at a name, look at what he did in college, look what he did on film, looks great, looks wonderful, and he should be in the second round because that team needs a receiver. Well, he could need a receiver, but if that receiver does not pick up the offenses quickly, can't read defenses, can't find coverage, space, whatever, all that stuff goes out the window. But these draft people have these wonderful grades on them. And so we've seen, that's why we see a lot of draft busts, draft picks up, and so on and so forth, because it's what the people graded on as opposed to what the team sees. Eric, what are your thoughts on the draft grades and whatnot?
So they grade them based on the whole package, right? The combine testing, the pro day testing, and then the teams just right based on the fit. So teams, where do you need to improve upon? What kind of athlete did you draft in that position, etc. So I love just personally, I love the best player available, philosophy, because I believe in getting, the best athlete and figuring out everything else as you go on. But typically these draft grades, okay, how does they project out and what kind of impact do they have and what kind of weakness? And that's pretty much how they draft it. I'll be honest with you, my favorite draft pick wasn't any of the guys that fit the needs. My favorite athlete or draft pick was a guy in the third round that I thought was the best linebacker in the draft. And I thought it would be about the impact and about getting the quality of player, the potential to have a stud, not necessarily a pick. But that's how it's graded, and I get it. I mean, ideally, I think, looking at the draft, everybody's got grades, and that's what they're paid to do, right?
I think it would be an interesting experiment, Eric, if we were to at some point go do some data analysis, go back maybe 7 or 8 years to a draft, whatever it is, look at the draft grades that were given, after the draft, and then go look at what that looks like. I mean, how it actually played out. If you say there's an A+ draft, I mean, we don't have to do every 32 NFL teams, but if we were to say, let's pick an A, a B, a C, a D, and an E, and an F, whatever the case may be, pick one of each, and then actually go do some research on those players. Where are they at? Are they still on the team? Have they done? I mean, what have they done? And really look back, because I got to tell you, man, there's a lot of data stuff that happens, and PFF is your favorite place, and you think that I care about PFF, which is always hilarious to me when I only use PFF to contradict everything you say. But what is funny to me is I see all these different things, but what I don't see is anybody going back to grade trades, right, that include draft picks. They don't go back and grade drafts that actually have shown what the players have accomplished. I think that would be an interesting experiment. Maybe we start something on From the Couch, and then we call it the FTC stats on past shit. That we could call it something stupid.
I'm going to be unbiased with you, and I'll give you an example of an A+ draft that ended up being a terrible draft, just because I've done that. I've looked into that. The second to last year, Kevin Colbert was GM for Pittsburgh. They traded up to draft Devin Bush, and they got an A+ in the draft, and that was a failure because Devin Bush, after he tore his ACL, was a terrible player.
Yeah.
So that draft class actually was one of the worst draft class they ever got, but they were rated an A+ on that draft. Typically,
I thought Devin Bush was amazing until he tore his ACL, because he was killing it, but it didn't turn out well for future.
Well, and the thing about the Pittsburgh draft, I'm sorry, Sean, just one thing. And the thing about the third round pick of Pittsburgh with Peyton Wilson, is that the guy, the linebacker? I mean, that could be an amazing pick, or it could be a wasted pick. I mean, the guy don't have an ACL. So again, it's the risk and reward. And Pittsburgh took the risk. And if he plays to his potential, it could reap rewards that far succeed anything that we could think of. But there's a risk involved in that. And Pittsburgh was willing to take the risk. There was teams in 2 rounds that weren't. And so that could be, it's a boom or bust pick. But they're the ones that took the chance. So good on them. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I am going to go back and for next week's show, I am going to look at the ISDIC 12 and what grade did they get with the ISDIC 12? Because we all know that is a big fat freaking F. So that's like one of the most infamous draft classes of all time. They didn't get anything right. Not
Which
one.
one's that?
The Jets in 2014, Mike Isdick, he drafted 12 players, and they're now known as ISDIC 12. The final guy just retired this year, but none of them, not one of them.
And
Like I think Golston was like one of the first pick.
Yeah.
That was the first pick.
And I will say, there are draft classes for all 32 teams, and for certain years where there was not those impact players through 7 rounds of a draft. I mean, their teams were just picking on sheer need that didn't pan out, because I think that there were a lot of those players in those drafts that were just not able to turn the corner in pros for whatever reason.
Sure, I just want to know what grade they got.
Oh yeah,
I
got you.
You know, back in 2000, after it was done, do they get? Oh, they got a C or a D, or because if they gave them an A, holy shit!
It's like,
now we're talking.
I remember the one draft, Buffalo got a B+ for drafting Eric Flowers, and the guy was like an F-. The guy didn't do anything. Or Aaron Maben. It was like a B+ or an A- because they needed an edge rusher, and that guy might have had 2 tackles his career. And so, I mean, that was just but on draft day, that was a need. He was the best guy available at that position, A-. Okay. Who gives a shit?
Sean, you said 2012?
14.
14. Okay, hold on. I'm going to tell you right now. I looked at the wrong
Please
year.
do.
For the Jets grade in 2014, it was. This is NFL.com. I don't know where they got that. I mean, there's a bunch of places, right? But NFL.com for the 2012 Jets.
14.
Or 2014. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is stupid. ESPN.com or NFL.com sucks for draft grades.
But no,
I was trying to look at it real quick. But why don't we go ahead and bring up the graphic there?
well, I can't really bring it up. I can't bring it up, but what team do you guys want to talk about?
Why can't you bring it up?
What do you mean you can't bring it up? It's right there.
Where? Oh, shit. Sorry, Sean.
Dear God.
Go ahead, Jeff. I'll leave it up to you.
Nope, I ain't touching shit, moron. You're a fucking
All right,
idiot.
thank you.
Okay, so this is the first round of the draft.
What's up, Bailey?
I want to talk about the most surprising pick, but that does not. We've all heard about Atlanta for the last week. Take them out of it. Penix is out. And anybody else have somebody that was like glaring, like, oh my God, either did he slip? How did he fall that far, or why did they pick him?
San Francisco picking Ricky Pearsall in the first round. That was a head scratcher to me.
Okay.
I thought for sure that would have necessitated a trade in day 2 for Debo or Brandon Ayuk. I think there were better receivers in the draft if they were going to take a receiver at 31, especially seeing who was it? Was it Luke McCaffrey who went in the second round early? Again, Ricky Pearsall at 31 just kind of it shocked me, but it also was like, okay, if you're taking this guy, you're going to be moving on from an Ayuk or a Samuel, because you're bringing in almost like a quick, like, gadget receiver. Not to say that those things still can't happen, because it's only May 1st, but that was definitely just something that stuck out to me.
All right, Jeff, who do you got?
Who did you say we couldn't pick as the surprise?
I'd like to talk about Penix, and I know Jeff.
Hey, hold on. I was talking to the host. I didn't ask you, Sean.
No, you can't. Penix has been talked about forever. We know that was like the biggest. Holy, what the hell?
So you're asking what was the biggest surprise of the first round, in my opinion?
Besides Penix, yeah. Like, was there anything that jumped out at you?
So the biggest, I don't want to say surprise. I mean, Joe Alt going at 5 was interesting. I don't think it was a bad pick, but saying the Chargers needed a lot. The fact that they stayed there and the Cardinals stayed where they were at for those two, 4, 5, I was pretty surprised they stayed. But at 10 is where it surprises me, and at 10 is where I'll continue to be baffled until such a time in which he proves otherwise. But at J.J. McCarthy going in the first round is baffling. J.J. McCarthy going at pick 10 after being traded up for, simply just aggravating as shit. So anyway, to me, we'll see if I'm wrong about it. But at the end of the day, to me, shock, but not shock because they said the Giants were going to pick him at 6. So I guess I'm happier he fell to 10. But the fact that he is in the top 64 is ridiculous.
Oh,
The
wow.
Jets' grade that year
Okay.
was B plus, by the way.
B plus. The Big 12 got a B fucking plus. Holy shit. That shows you no one knows what the hell they're talking about.
It does. You're
All
right.
right, Eric, what you got?
I think the Denver and Bo Nix thing is hilarious because most people had him going second or third round. And I think in the first round, they saw McCarthy go, and they were like, crap, he just went really quick. And then they were shocked as hell with the Penix pick. And I think that changed the entire draft. So the Bo Nix draft pick to me is a reactionary, oh, crap, we don't have a plan at quarterback draft pick. So instead of grabbing a quality player, they took a real big bust candidate who really struggled at Auburn with some NFL type competition down in the SEC where they actually play defense rather than what the Pac-12 what used to be the Pac-12. So to me, that was a scared pick. We don't have a plan pick. And a pick that probably has the most potential to not work out. Otherwise, a little surprising that Carolina jumped up one spot and gave up what they gave up in the first round just to get a guy they could have waited to get, and Xavier Legette. I thought that was a bad trade. So those are my two, I guess, if I had to nitpick, the two things I do not like in the first round.
Okay. My big thing, I got a couple of them real quick. Jared Verse falling down to 19 was that was surprising to me. I figured he was going to go sooner. Sweat from Texas, he fell to was it third round?
Second
Or third round. He should not have gone there. But anybody who, if they're trading, that team's going to say, who are you going for? And obviously the Bills did not want Xavier Legette. So they were like, we'll just take a step back because we're still going to get the guy we needed. So and it wasn't like a large trade down. So they just traded down one. So it was a good call on their part. Trading with Kansas City. I got two questions here, one on one subject, one on another. Why on earth would the Buffalo Bills, who are in an arms race with Kansas City, back up to let Kansas City take a player? Bill Belichick would never, ever, ever do that for the Jets.
Can I answer that?
Before you answer it,
do.
Dave, I can play the video. So Brandon Beane spoke about this to what's his face? What's the guy's name that we all love?
McAfee.
Yeah, McAfee. And it was simple. He said Kansas City was going to trade up. They were trading up no matter what. They don't know who they want. Yes, they know they want a player, but they don't know if it's a player they want or not. But again, they don't ask that question. If it was a player for player, like don't send Diggs to them, that's a simple answer. We don't send them a player that's going to beat us, but they don't know who they specifically want. Yeah, they knew they wanted a receiver, but they don't know which one. And is it the one that Buffalo wants? They don't know that. So he says he doesn't necessarily believe fans. I like that part. He's like, well, fans are fans, and they'll put that thing together. But at the end of the day, we didn't know who they wanted, and we didn't know if that was who we wanted. So if we could get something, because again, like to Eric's point, which makes sense, I can't stand the fact that we've traded with Kansas City, by the way, but understanding that you're not trying to pay first round prices based on your cap situation. Well, you move back, and like they said, they don't know if Kansas City or who they've called. They didn't say, hey, we want to trade so we can move up so we can get Xavier Worthy. They said, we want to move up. We'll give you this. That was fine. They made the decision. It was simple.
Well, the fact that Buffalo got a third round pick out of that trade, if you notice in the draft, when people were trading back in rounds, they were not giving up anything lower than fourth round picks. Buffalo didn't have a third round pick. Buffalo gave up, 4 spots to get a third round pick.
They got 2 third round picks because that's what they got. They moved up from Carolina too.
No, they got a fourth.
Fourth.
They double
So
traded.
they moved up. They moved up 36 spots in the Kansas City trade, and then they moved up 54 spots in the Carolina trade. So that's why you make trades like that. And to Jeffrey's point, they don't know who they're going to take. But Brandon Beane said going into this draft prior to, he had about 15 first-round grades on players. If Brian Thomas would have been sitting there at 28, I can guarantee you that Buffalo would not have traded that pick. But the fact is, with the receivers that were left at that position, they probably didn't have a first-round grade from their draft board on that, so they were able to move down. Go ahead, Jeff.
I got a question. This is the thing that Eric put some shit in the chat, and I just have to answer this because it's funny to me. It's funny because even when it happened, it was funny because it was like whatever, and now that it's the way it is, everybody's like, I can't believe it. When Buffalo traded the 10th pick to Kansas City for them to draft Mahomes, I think what's hilarious is that Kansas City booed, the fans booed Kansas City. The analysts said that was a ridiculous trade, especially to pick at 10 because Mahomes graded in college horribly. There was no he was too much of a street baller and not a foot setter, and he didn't do these things, and his grades were off, and he wasn't going to do shit. And everybody's like, okay, well, Buffalo got what they wanted. They got to move back, and Kansas City's stupid. They made a bad choice. But, the good thing is that he was drafted at 10, a.k.a. Penix, I know similar time, to sit behind a quarterback. And they sat behind a quarterback and learned a system that Andy Reid was developing and showing. And then all of a sudden, Mahomes becomes Mahomes. Buffalo doesn't trade. And first of all, they wouldn't have drafted Mahomes to begin with, number one. But had they drafted Mahomes, we would never be talking about Mahomes. Buffalo wasn't in a position to do anything in that year's draft. So we would have drafted him to start and be behind how many offensive coordinators since? Because he didn't have the system that Kansas City has or the players that allowed him to be what he was. So it's funny to me to listen to talk to people that say you could have had Mahomes. Yeah, and guess what? We wouldn't have, because at the end of the day, I will pull up all of Mahomes' draft grades and all the shit and all the nonsense that the reporters were talking about. What year was he drafted? 16 or 15?
2017. I think they gave Kansas City a C minus for that pick because Mahomes was too small, didn't have big hands, didn't play in the pocket, was all over the place. All these negative things. And so again, like I said,
it's just funny.
Like we talk about, people have opinions. I remember when Buffalo drafted Josh Allen, 90% of the Bills fans wanted Josh Rosen. How would have that turned out? Because again, general managers know more than all of us sitting here and everybody who's sitting there listening to us. They understand. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. We don't. We take guesses. And if our mock draft sucks, then the GM is stupid and we're the smart ones. Yet Patrick Mahomes, Hall of Famer, greatest quarterback, the GOAT conversation in his fourth
Let me
year.
read this quote, Dave. Let me read this quote. John Dorsey, head coach, saw Brett Favre in Green Bay, and they seem to have some like for this gunslinger attitude in Mahomes. There is a risk factor, however, given his penchant for throwing the ball anywhere from any angle, which will turn into interceptions in the NFL, and they have a future first-round pick to get him. Or they gave up a future first-round pick to get him. But if anybody can get Mahomes to adjust and succeed, it's Reid. I'm not sure it'll work out, but good luck to Andy Reid. They got a B- for that grade. Or for that draft pick. Interesting. Now, I bet you if you were to regrade it, it would be an A++++, and they're just brilliant and genius. But guess what? Whoever graded this shit should get fired because they're an expert, right? So, I know the failed GM that you follow so closely today, Eric, and you're talking about how great he is. I'm sure he got fired for his douchebag insights on Patrick Mahomes back in 17 too.
Which failed GM?
The guy, Louis Riddick, who said that he sees an offensive explosion coming for Pittsburgh. Sure, I'd love to hear all that stuff.
We're not going back there. All I'll say is touche, and we can move forward.
All right. So now, Sean, I know.
What?
Go ahead, Sean.
Well, I want Eric to answer the question. What was his biggest surprise of the draft?
Yeah, I said I don't like Carolina moving down. I don't like Carolina trading down. I think the Bills were desperately trying to get out of the first round because they're paying for all the different contracts that that they didn't like and they got to move on for. So this year is a heavily dependent on young players to try to make up for what some of the veterans are doing. But I don't like Carolina trading down one pick and giving up anything to trade down one pick. They could have gotten a quality player at 33 at wide receiver, and they already have a bunch of wide receivers. They have other needs, and so I don't like the Xavier Legette may be a good player, but I don't like the pick. And I mentioned the Bo Nix thing. I think the Bo Nix is we don't have a plan, and 5 quarterbacks are off the board.
All right.
So, can I just go back to one thing, because I'm not going to mention Michael Penix, but I want to say this. The Atlanta Falcons, after they drafted Michael Penix at 8, they were trying to trade with the New York Jets to come back into number 10. So they had a plan, or they had an idea that they wanted to come back in and probably take the defensive end and Dallas Turner. So they were trying to work a trade with New York Jets at 10 before the Jets dropped back a spot to 11 with Minnesota. But Atlanta was trying desperately to get back to 10. And Patrick Mahomes had a 6.3 draft grade, a prospect grade coming out of college. So what the NFL experts know and what the GMs know are two different things.
All righty. And one thing I'm going to say is we know as much as anybody, any scout, any GM, any whatever. It's a guessing game. And we all have our different opinions. So, Skip Bayless, Johnny Manziel is going to be the greatest football quarterback ever. He's full of shit. So anyway, let's, do what we got to do. Okay. So I want to go on to, this is a question for debate. So if we can kind of mark where we are at 47 minutes into this broadcast. Bo Nix getting drafted at 12. Did Denver draft Bo Nix out of necessity because J.J. McCarthy got taken off the board and they knew the Raiders needed a quarterback? If they didn't pick Bo Nix and waited until the second round, and because there was not a lot of people behind him or no one behind him who needed a quarterback, did they make that pick at 12 because they absolutely had to because they needed a quarterback, or did they just really like the guy?
I think they liked him, but I also think it was out of necessity. I mean, the fact of the matter was the Broncos did need a quarterback, and the Broncos were trying to trade up, and they couldn't get in. But Sean Payton did like Bo Nix, and the fact was he was there, and it wasn't I'm going to screw the Raiders and draft the quarterback. It was a guy that we liked, and it's a position of need, and I know going back, if he's still there, somebody's going to take him. And so, yeah, Denver did take him out of the fact that they liked him.
I think the Falcons screwed the Raiders with a quarterback, which I don't think was. And I think what Peyton was talking about, how he coaxed Minnesota into believing he was trying to move forward, which he wasn't, because he knew. The bottom line is, I think everybody knew that Minnesota was high on J.J. McCarthy. Everybody throughout the entirety of the pre-draft, but I think there was a lot of conversation with J.J. McCarthy going to the Giants. And I think that was a lot of conversation to get Minnesota to try to move to 6. They didn't. They got up there at 10 or wherever they went to, which that's fine. But I think Denver was pleasantly surprised with who they got. I don't think it's out of necessity. They don't have a quarterback, but I think that's who they wanted. The other thing is where I look at it and I say, well, you're bringing a guy to fail, because I think we're going to talk about the quarterbacks and where do we see them finishing over their rookie, second, third, fourth years, and we'll look at their careers if we want to. But I think that when you bring in someone like Bo Nix, you lost Jerry Jeudy to the Browns, so you only have Courtland Sutton, who you may lose to the, I know Eric said he's an elite receiver now that he might go to Pittsburgh, but you lose him to, you have Courtland Sutton, but they went out and drafted his buddy, Bo Nix's guy. I forgot what receiver it was, but he was throwing him to an Oregon. What's his name? I forgot. Franklin. He's a quick guy. So I don't know. I think it shows you that was a plan. is that they grabbed a quarterback and then they grabbed someone he could be close with, just like they did with Burrow and Chase, obviously in 2 separate drafts. But you went through to get someone they're comfortable with, to get them into the system and at least have someone where there's chemistry already there, in hopes that they fall in line with the offense. And that was the interesting thing that they were talking about on Sirius Radio, is they were talking about Bo Nix's level of knowledge on plays, like understanding the playbook and understand how to talk about defenses and how they play and making calls and adjustments. Same, by the way, with Michael Penix, which I do have something to say about Penix if we do want to talk about, not about the surprise, about why I think it was a brilliant decision, even though, like, David explained it on draft night. I mean, I think he either said it on the show or he brought it up later on in our chat, but he was talking about the fact that more likely than not, Atlanta won't have a first-round draft choice next year based on the tampering stuff, right? So that's a reality. But here's a more interesting thing, in which I thought about later on. But when we were talking in our chat, me and David were texting. I think it was me, David, and the Sons. I was like, I forgot. We talked about how Bill Belichick wasn't the coach. He didn't get hired. That's obvious. But I couldn't, for the life of me, remember who was the coach. And David said Raheem Morris. I said, that's why they did it, because he's a moron, right? But there was something further. So a lot of times people forget that Morris came with the Rams. He was there for a few years with the Rams, right? Sean McVay and team had a scouting report on Penix, and they put Penix up right behind Caleb Williams. So when you put you see Jalen Daniels and you see May, and then you see JJ McCarthy in order. Well, Penix was right behind Caleb Williams based on what McVay liked. And he talked about his, cerebral abilities, his ability to break down plays, his ability to break down defenses, his ability to make audibles on the move without having to worry about play calls. And because they were out that way, they could see it, right? They saw him, they met with him, they talked to him. Well, you take him, when I say him, Raheem Morris, and the offensive coordinator to Atlanta, and now you pair that up with the scouting report that Atlanta's got up.
It's Jared Mayo.
What's that?
It's not Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris is Texas. Gerard Mayo is Patriots.
No. Raheem Morris is Atlanta. He went to the Falcons. Raheem Morris is.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking.
No. I'm talking about why they drafted him. Why it's a brilliant idea is because you've got Raheem Morris, who isn't a great offensive guy to do some depth looking, but the offensive coordinator that came with him from the Rams, McVay's offensive genius, if you will, they found him to be very high. So at the end of the day, add the fact that that you have a starter for 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on how you work with Kirk Cousins, but also knowing that he's coming off an ACL. Is he available for the first part of the season? You got a quarterback that you believe is truly the best guy after number one. And you made a deal. I mean, you stayed where you're at and got it. Surprising as it may be, shocking to a lot of us, it seemed as though there was some good thought put into it. And it wasn't just a dumbass draft. So I was pretty impressed when I listened to some of that stuff throughout the course of the last few days. Anyhow, I got a question for Sean when he comes back, because he went to the bathroom because he was like, "Man, I fucking hate."
Let me just real quick. I love how NFL teams are, and we get mad at me for being excited, but NFL teams, they could draft whoever could fall to them in the draft, and they could be like, "This is the plan all along. We got the guy. That was our top guy," and really, they're secretly maybe pissed off because they didn't get their guy, but they're not going to share that because it's a big PR propaganda thing. So I guess we won't know. We don't know if Bo Nix is going to be the guy, but I think everybody can agree here that he is not. We didn't see elite play in the SEC, and then he went to Oregon, and he got beat by Penix. And Washington had a better team, and it's not just the quarterback. But he didn't show traits that were a game-changing, a number 12 pick in the draft. So I think it's a gamble, and I think it's ideally Denver doesn't have the cap to go get another quarterback. And so they were figuring we're going to have to get a quarterback somewhere, and then 6 quarterbacks went in the first round. How many do you guys think that these 6 quarterbacks, how many of them do you think will be elite out of the 6 guys that got
elite? One, maybe. And I don't think it's Caleb Williams. But real quick, again, I find you talking out of your mouth in one conversation. You sit here and just say everything you just said about Penix, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know if he's going to be great. Oregon, I've always said it. Pac-12 quarterbacks are pretty interesting, right? I mean, Oregon they don't play a defense. I mean, and they sling the ball. USC, Washington, but you told me JJ McCarthy's going to be good in the NFL because of but he didn't show any elite anything at all where a quarterback would be in the top 38, 47, or 92. Yet. Bo Nix.
My thing goes to this. I look at it like I've said about everything. It's who you have on your coaching staff. It's what you do with your quarterback. It's how you develop that quarterback. There could have been quarterbacks who could have been great that went to teams, okay, that had shitty quarterback development. Caleb Williams could be prime example number one of a guy who has all the talent in the world, could be a number one. But he went to a Chicago Bears team that has kept its coaching staff intact, and you didn't do anything to change change your situation. You went out and signed these wide receivers, but you kept the guys who develop your quarterback the same. And that's where I say Caleb Williams could waste the first year or two of his career before they have to bring in an entire new coaching staff and learn a different system. And that's the problem that I have. But Sean, I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the draft, were you surprised that the New York Jets did not draft a quarterback like Spencer Rattler?
What?
Were you surprised that the Jets did not try to have a succession plan for Aaron Rodgers and draft a guy like Spencer Rattler in the draft? You didn't take one quarterback.
No, we took a quarterback in the 6th or 7th round. The guy from 5th round from Florida.
Which one was
State,
that?
I mean.
Oh, you did draft a quarterback?
Yeah, we drafted a quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the 5th round, it wasn't a big gamble. Listen, right now, the Jets are in we have to do this now. We're not looking at the future. We're looking 2-year window best. That's who the Jets are right now. And at least we're starting to have a little bit of hope. We had hope for 3.5 plays last year. Yeah, but that's, we did draft a quarterback. I'm not looking for him to be anything special. Maybe he can sit behind Aaron, but Aaron is a lot like Peyton, a lot like Brady. He's not a teacher. They give a little bit of knowledge here and there. But I'm sorry, quarterback is a position with it has to be learned, and it's instinctual.
Well, and again, so this goes back to my point. You say that Aaron's not a teacher, and he very well could not be a teacher, but Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. Okay, and they so far, at least the first year, Jordan Love's done fine. Aaron Rodgers did fine sitting behind Favre. Favre did good. The fact is, what I look at is your team is Aaron Rodgers or nothing. I don't care. It was proven last year. Oh, sure it was. Aaron Rodgers went down. What did the Jets do? They still have their defense. They still had offense. What didn't they have? They didn't have
We didn't have offense. We didn't have offense.
They beat Buffalo.
I don't give a shit. I don't care what
week of the season.
Oh my God. Buffalo beat Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh sucks, okay? It doesn't matter who they beat. They didn't make the playoffs. They didn't do anything. They didn't make the playoffs. Go
on with your point, David.
My point is, if you are the Jets, you are putting every egg into your basket of Aaron Rodgers' Achilles not falling apart again at 45 years old, however the hell old he is, and you did nothing. Okay, 40, whatever.
He'll be 41 during the season.
Right, and you did nothing to ensure.
Well, they did.
If anything happened,
they got Tyrod Taylor.
Oh, so you did nothing to ensure that if anything happens to your star after what happened last year, that you can have a semblance of a team to compete.
All right, Sean,
Yes.
I'm going to counterpoint. If anything happens to your guy, you have Mitchell Trubisky,
Yep.
and you talk too. So I mean,
He made the playoffs. He took Chicago to the playoffs. The only quarterback to do it in 50 years.
Yeah, but last year, where he is right now, last year he was the worst quarterback.
Yeah, but he was on a horrible team though, and that's the thing that you don't
Yeah,
want to
one wide receiver.
Mason Rudolph came in
One
and
wide receiver.
in the game after he came in. So
Kenny Pickett was a horrible quarterback because you had no offense. You had Mac.
Okay, you can counter by saying if Buffalo, that's fine. But here's the reality. What we know is that if Josh Allen gets hurt, that sucks, right? And if any quarterback gets hurt, it sucks. If Josh Allen gets hurt, it sucks. But here's our reality. Josh Allen is the franchise quarterback of the Buffalo Bills for the future. It doesn't matter if that's 4 more years, 10 more years, 30 more years. He's the future. We know that Aaron Rodgers is a shelf lifespan of 24 months, 2 years. So what are you going to do? And see, this is the thing, right? And Eric, you know, what I figured is at this point, you'd be a little emotional and caring and thoughtful because the Steelers fucked that up too because you drafted Duck Hodges or Duck Dynasty to replace Ben Roethlisberger a year before he was out. You guys didn't plan properly on his exit either because you went out and got Mason, wasn't the answer, especially after Garrett clubbed him. Duck Dynasty wasn't, and then we know Kenny Pickett wasn't. You failed to prepare and develop a quarterback after Ben. And here we go. The Jets are in that same – and regardless of what he's saying, David, I agree with you in the sense that the Jets are all in. I like the fact that they went out and got something to protect Aaron Rodgers, a weapon for Aaron Rodgers, but the fact that they really didn't put – like I would have thought a Spencer Rattler, even though I don't think he's going to be equated into a great quarterback. The kid out of Tulane was a good quarterback. To wait as long as you did to get a guy that would be a developmental program or partner for the next 24 months underneath Ben, because you're not going to – this guy that they drafted in the 5th or 6th round more than likely won't be in New York in 2 years.
There's only been a couple teams that have done it successfully and continued on and not struggled after they've replaced a franchise quarterback.
Sure.
There's 3 examples I'll give you. The Colts, the 49ers, Packers. So ideally, it's hard to replace that.
What is the
goal?
Where's the 49ers in this real quick?
Steve Young replacing Joe Montana.
Okay, that's different. They didn't draft Young; they traded for Young.
It was a succession plan.
Where are the Colts?
Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck was drafted and Peyton Manning was traded. There was no succession plan. We're going to go 1-15 because Aaron Rodgers Manning has a broken neck. We're going to go 1-15.
That was the succession.
Andrew Luck started and Peyton Manning was traded the same year. There's no succession plan.
And that was the succession plan. They had a team. I mean, that's a plan. But what kills me is we talk about like the Jets. The Jets are built right now to win, and they have. We act like talent doesn't matter, and like, well, we're continuity, and you can replace this player or this player, and we do the same system, and nothing, everything. We just do the same thing over and over again, and we're just magically going to be the best because the same thing over and over again works. The Jets were competitive, and they won a game without an offense. They were winning games without an offense, just like Pittsburgh is winning games without an offense. And so now the Jets have an offense because Rodgers is back. You're counting on him. Well, what happens if he gets hurt again? We could play the what if game for every team and every.
I don't consider what you're saying to be wrong. I before the season last year, I said the Jets are going to be a great team, and they're going to be a great team. I don't necessarily consider what David's saying as the thought process, but I mean I can agree with him. They signed Tyrod Taylor, and Tyrod will get hurt too in some mysterious way. What I'm saying is, this year, you got 2 seasons left. So at what point do you develop a quarterback to take over for the New York Jets and you wait till Rodgers retires? And I'm not saying they should have picked the first-round quarterback, but I am saying they should have addressed the need earlier than the 5th round to ensure that they have something to back up and to develop over the next 2 years before Rodgers is done, if not sooner. Because if they draft him next year, it's not the time.
The problem is people are afraid to hurt Aaron Rodgers' feelings. And that's the sad part. And it's the sad reality. They don't want to hurt Aaron Rodgers' feelings because he might go on another mushroom trip and have to go into darkness to find out if
I don't think that anybody hurts Aaron Rodgers' feelings with New York at this point. Listen, It's one thing when they drafted Love in the first round. That was a slap in the face, especially when he was asking for help offensively. Love couldn't do anything right now. I get that, right? But right now, where Aaron Rodgers sits, the dude has changed a lot of his tune since the day he arrived in New York last year to begin with. Number two, he tore his Achilles on the fourth play. He wasn't even, it was a 3 and out, and the dude was out for the season. So I think he understands where he's at. And it's from an organizational standpoint, I think he understands there's a time that he's not going to be there. But we're sitting here saying someone's scared. I just think they made a horrible selection and during the draft, not the guy that they drafted. I don't know anything about the dude. So the Florida quarterback might be good. I just figured there would have been, I mean, to me, it's surprising that they didn't put a succession plan in earlier, that they didn't draft a quarterback that was a little higher caliber than what they got. And that next year is not the time to draft a quarterback in the first round, because especially if Aaron's still healthy and you didn't make it, you want to do something that's going to get you over the edge.
Sean, I just want to answer Jay real quick.
Sean was on mute. Let him talk.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, so back to the original question. Am I surprised that the Jets did nothing to play? No, I'm not. And the Jets, they're not planning on anything. They're and as sorry as it is to say, yes.
All in.
Jay has been, with Green Bay, and they're the youngest team in the NFL, building for the future, and that's great. But I'll tell you something, Jay. You got to eventually pay these guys. And when you got to pay them all, you can't pay them all. So they got to get moving there. But, it just basically, yes, we are all in on Aaron Rodgers. We don't give a shit about anything else. And on the fourth play of this season, if he goes down, I can hang it up and wait for another decade. Hopefully, I still have another decade left of me, But I want to see some competitive football. And I think what the Jets did this year, not going for Brock Bowers, I think that spoke volumes, because they need quarterback protection. It's always been the Jets' problem. 2010, 2011, we had a great line. They sucked ever since. And if you watch that Jet Miami game, they snapped the ball, and I swear to God, all 5 guys on the Jets line just stood up and watched guys walk past them. That's what they did. That's what you get with Mekhi Becton and whatever.
Yeah.
Let me answer Jay's question real quick, because he said, well, who's behind Mahomes? You don't make a succession plan for a guy like Patrick Mahomes who's got 10 years left. Kansas City made the succession plan when they had Alex Smith and drafted Patrick Mahomes. That was the succession.
They got Carson Wentz.
They have Carson Wentz, but you don't.
Yeah, but that's not a succession plan.
Not a succession plan. Carson Wentz is somebody that if Patrick Mahomes goes down, you have a serviceable quarterback to back him up. But the fact is, Buffalo is not going to go out in the first round and draft a successor to Josh Allen, because Josh Allen has 10 years in his career left. A succession plan is when your quarterback has 1 or 2 years, like when Ben Roethlisberger was going to retire and you did nothing. That's not having a succession plan.
Hey, when Tom Brady went down to New England, did New England go and, hey, we got to get a quarterback behind him? No, the goal was
they
to win.
drafted Mac Jones.
The goal was to no, they didn't draft anybody worth a damn. The goal was to win a Super Bowl. And that was the idea. Is we're bringing them in.
Say it again, because you broke up. What did you say?
When Tom Brady came to New England,
came to New England?
Came down to Tampa.
Yeah.
Did Tampa Bay go and be like, we got to get a quarterback behind Tom Brady while he's here? No.
They drafted Mac Jones in the first round.
Oh, you mean Pittsburgh or Tampa?
New England.
Tampa. Did Tampa pick anybody?
Tampa drafted Kyle Trask in the second round.
After they signed Brady.
Yeah. After they signed Brady.
And then you got Baker Mayfield. Kyle Trask was their backup, and he was the plan. But then Baker Mayfield became available for $3 million. So just like your guy.
The point of it is the idea the Jets are not thinking, hey, what are we going to do in 5 years? What are we going to do now? The Jets are thinking, hey, let's get a Super Bowl. And so that's why you bring in Aaron Rodgers.
Again, wait, hold on. You're right. But look at the depth. See, here's the crazy part, right? Because, again, now you're going to talk about the Jets lineup. You know they have a nice defense. I can tell you every one on their defense of starters. I'm high on the Jets. I was last year too. I know they're a great team.
I'm
They're
too.
skill set players on offense from Breece Hall, who's healthy and he's coming off the thing. They got a good backup for depth in the running back position. They got one of the better receivers in Garrett Wilson. They added to that. I get that. And they added to their I'm not mad that they grabbed an offensive line to replace Becton because the dude sucked. That was smart. I'm not saying they should have grabbed a quarterback in the first round. I'm not even saying I thought Brock Bowers was a shoo-in in New York. They grabbed a lineman. Smart, because those are the things that Aaron Rodgers was always bitching about, was they didn't grab offensive lineman and offensive help for him in Green Bay. They'd go and draft a quarterback or a defensive player that would always put him in a bad situation because he wanted better players. So good on him. That is it. The second round, they got a receiver in the second round, right? Wasn't it a receiver, Sean?
Yeah, they got Malachi Corley.
Right. Great receiver. There you go. To add to your receiving core, because Lazard, the other dude they brought in last year, they're gone. So they got that. But in the third round, grab you a quarterback because your defense is already stout. They lost but gained. Their defense is great. Saleh is an amazing defensive-minded coach. He's shitty on offense. And I say that regardless of who's been in there, he hasn't showed that he can do anything offensively regardless of who the players were. He's not that guy. So at the end of the day, let Aaron Rodgers be the Aaron Rodgers.
That's where I think they made the mistake. In round three, they could have drafted.
We never talked about
quarterback, and they took Braylon Allen after they drafted Akeem Abakonda last year, behind Breece Hall and whoever else was in New York with Breece Hall last year. So they went out and got another running back. That was the round that the Jets should have said, we got 2 years with Aaron Rodgers. Let's draft a quarterback to develop him behind Aaron if we're going to develop quarterback. Okay?
No.
So I just think they made the mistake because what's going to happen, and the way I look at it is this, Sean. Trust me, I'm a Bills fan for 20 years, and I've been through this shit more than I care to. But what happens is you put all your eggs in one basket. If it doesn't work out for you, something happens to Aaron Rodgers retires in 2 years, you got 5 years of misery again, maybe if the Jets are good. Because they're going to have to tear their team down, okay? And they're going to have to draft a quarterback and develop a quarterback when they could have had a third-round guy who could have stepped in. Jordan Love stepped in for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers stepped in for Brett Favre. Whether they drafted him in the first round 4 years prior to him playing a game or not, that's why I think especially knowing the succession plan that Aaron Rodgers came from in Green Bay, if I'm looking at a team as a quarterback, or if I'm a team looking at quarterbacks and how I want to develop them, I want to have a guy that I can succeed my aging quarterback who's got a couple of years left coming off an Achilles to be ready to step in so I don't have to lose that year or 2 or 3 to develop this guy again. I want my team to stay consistent. That's all. Again, I get your point.
Yeah, okay. I get it. But right now, you don't have that luxury. As the New York Jets, you have to keep putting all the ammo and all the weapons behind Aaron Rodgers. That's all you're banking on. And I understand, 2 years down the line, fuck 2 years down the line. We're not in that position. We are not in that position.
Well, you were because you addressed the needs that he had. And here's the problem that you're going to have and Jets fans are going to have is this. Wait, hold on. Let me finish. And you can say, I said the biggest problem you're going to have is you're all in today, right now. If you don't win, if you don't succeed, you're going to have 7 years of, man, we should have drafted a quarterback in the third, or we should have drafted this guy, because now what do we got? We got Braylon Allen, we got Breece Hall, and what is our team? Nothing, because you had an opportunity to get somebody to sit behind your all-pro, Hall of Fame,
Hey, Sean, let me help you here. Hey, so you and Jeff, I'm going to take that logical name from you. You and Jeff answered this question. How many of the 6 quarterbacks would be elite good quarterbacks? Elite 1. So in the third or second round, how many of those quarterbacks that you draft are going to be starter material quarterbacks that you can draft? The second,
Yeah. Hey, so let me say this real quick. Elite is a different ideology based on development, right? So here's the deal: how many quarterbacks are going to come in on day one and start and be elite? Not many in general. I mean, from the history of the NFL.
None.
So that's just not this draft class. This is the history of the NFL. Drafted, come into the shitty team that they're on in day one and become elite. No. But here's the reality. I would argue that there are several quarterbacks that have never took a snap in the NFL that were drafted into the NFL that were probably better than some of the starters that played in the NFL at their time. And I'm not talking about the elite ones. I'm not talking about the Mannings and the Breezes. I'm not talking about the Bradys and the Montanas. I am talking about these guys that maybe got drafted by a team that just wasn't good. And they developed nobody, and they couldn't get anybody. But you had three quarterback depth, and that third quarterback never got on the field, right? So what I'm saying is this: if you draft look, the Broncos had Simeon, Locke, and who was the other third guy that the Broncos had that all were on the same roster, and all of them were horrible, right? That's just really bad for them. But there were teams that had third level quarterbacks that could have replaced one of those guys and started. But guess what? Oh, it's Peyton Lynch or Paxton Lynch. Anyway. Those three weren't good, but there was a cat from Georgia that went to Florida, this high school down here. He was really good. He got drafted. Then he was ever played a snap in the NFL. Is it because he sucks? Maybe. But here's the deal. Put him on a team to let him develop and then see if he, and the reality is we got to know if we made the right choice. The thing that I'm saying, Eric, is how many draft choices, specifically quarterbacks, 7 rounds, get drafted, never touch the field, are backups for a while, and then they never, and they go away. And then you get another young guy because you don't get to the second contract. Well, that's the reality and the harshness of the business side of football. But what I'm telling you is you draft a quarterback in the 3rd round. I don't know who it is. And you set him behind arguably one of the best quarterbacks. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the history, top 10, easy, in Aaron Rodgers. Let him watch, learn, study, whatever he's got to do for 2 years. And then you let him compete. And maybe he's not great. Maybe he never even becomes an average quarterback. But you've set yourself up into a position to become that, and you give this kid an opportunity because you drafted him in the 3rd round, and maybe, just maybe, 3 years from now when he actually starts a game, he's already ahead because the Jets have a good, talented team. But Aaron Rodgers ain't going to last forever. So, this isn't just the Jets conversation, by the way. We're speaking about the Jets because it was surprising to me that they didn't do it with what they had to set themselves up for a success plan to develop a kid for the next 2 years. Period. Now, I'm never going to go back because I won't remember, by the way, 5 years from now after Rodgers retires and go back and say, Sean, you all should have drafted in 2024 a 3rd round quarterback. Not going to be a big deal. But I will tell you, if I remember 4 or 5 years from now, I'll be like, man, the Jets have been really struggling to get a leader on this and this behind this center. They're going quarterback after quarterback, and they're trying to fit this role, but why didn't they do that before they were worried about Aaron Rodgers stepping away from the game? Because we don't know when. We say 2 years. It could be very well in January of next year, right? So we don't know.
John, ask your question, and that's cool.
Okay. Listen, guys, I got to go, but I just want to leave you 2 quick things. Number 1, everybody out there, please like, subscribe, notify, share, get the word out there. Let's keep this going. And okay, Caleb Williams, number 1 draft pick. Is it possible, and I know this has happened many a time, that because he is going to the Bears, and I am not a big fan of Eberflus. I don't think he's a good coach at all. Is it possible this kid with this talent could be destroyed fairly quickly because he's gone to the wrong situation? And next year, if they don't do well this year, Eberflus is gone. Now he's got to start all over again. Do you think that is a distinct possibility?
I think that's a possibility. Yeah, I think that's a possibility for every single player ever drafted into the NFL. I would tell you that I'm not high on Caleb Williams. You guys know that, right? But when I look at quarterbacks, I don't care what year they're in. I look at quarterbacks going to a team. I think he's going to one of the best situations you could go to. Not the best coaches, right? Not the best coaches. But I look at a Justin Fields and I look at Caleb Williams, two different quarterbacks, period. One is a pocket guy that will extend plays by maneuvering to get out, but still want to throw the ball down the field, but can use his legs to evade. The other one runs all the time and happens to pass when he possibly can. Williams doesn't hold the ball too long. You have talent at every single offensive position on the Chicago Bears. From a talent perspective, I think he's in a much better situation than a Bo Nix or a what's his name? What's his name?
Daniels?
No. And
Drake May?
Drake May in New England. I don't think Drake May has any talent around him. I mean, at all. So I know they went and signed a receiver, but at the end of the day, from a talent perspective, the only rookie quarterback that I see with a better talent around him potentially would be Justin Jefferson, Madison, and then Aaron Jones in the backfield. But he's not going to see the field week one, so it's an irrelevant thing. Caleb Williams, for all intents and purposes, has a great running back. He has great receivers. He's got a decent line. They've adjusted, and then they did some things on the defense. I don't necessarily think I don't think it's a top 2 offense or top 5 offense, but I think it's a top 15 offense altogether. And if Caleb Williams can come in and just throw the ball and do what he did, I think it could be very successful. Now, Dave, I don't disagree with you. Eberflus sucks. I won't ever disagree with that. I think he could be very well done, right? I think it could be horrible for him. But I also think that he could surprise and turn some heads. Because I'll tell you, man, take a quarterback out of Miami, right? Take a quarterback away from Miami. Take Tua out and say, let me put another average quarterback, because we all thought Tua was pretty average before the arrival of Hill and Waddle and then the addition of running backs and an offensive line and then an offensive-minded coach, right? We thought he was like an average guy that could do some things. Well, he did well above average. So if I was to take Tua out of Miami and stick, I don't know, throw someone in there, Sam Howell, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, or another quarterback that I think is average or below. And I think that's a good position for them to be in, because the skill players, yes, you have to have coaches making the right calls to go to your strengths, but you have the skill set players that you don't, like, because I know Justin Fields could say, bro, y'all didn't do nothing for me from a skill set position. He just got sacked a lot. But anyway, you look at what Chicago's done from last year to right now. The addition, I mean, you have DJ Moore, you add Keenan Allen, you draft this young kid this week as another receiver. Yeah, and who's an amazing receiver. Then you got who's their running back now? Swift
and Swift, Khalil Herbert.
Yeah. So I mean, from a skilled perspective, he's got the talent around him, which a lot of times, Dave, we don't see quarterbacks with that much talent struggle. We just don't. I mean, and if you do, those guys go quickly. Like, they eliminate themselves. Coaching and stuff, that will fix itself. But the reality is that typically with people with skilled receiving or skilled positions that are, I think that's easily a top 10 skilled position team. Do we disagree there? Do we think from a skilled perspective that Chicago has a top 10 skill position team, or am I way off?
From a skill position, I would say they're close to top 10 with the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, so 15 to 10. I mean, I don't think they're 5, right? But I still think that they're.
I'd say that. At their skill position players.
Sure. So then you put a quarterback. You put a Tua in there. Are they great? If you put let's get away from the top 5 quarterbacks or top 7 quarterbacks. But if you put a Kirk Cousins in there, if you put a Kyler Murray in there, if you put a Justin Herbert in there, you put these guys, and that's a really phenomenal team, regardless of the coaching. I mean, don't get me wrong, wins and losses will come from coaching, and we know that. Eberflus doesn't do anything on the offense, so we're not worried about Eberflus making offensive play calls. Who's their offensive coordinator? It's not Eberflus.
No,
he's their defensive coordinator.
I don't even know who their offensive coordinator is.
Exactly.
They drafted an offensive tackle in the 3rd round, so they did upgrade. So,
yeah,
I mean,
this is a problem, and this is where Jay says the O-line has struggled a lot, and I just don't think it's a fair grade. It's not a fair grade. Justin Fields got sacked in the pocket very minimally. Justin Fields got sacked outside of the hash marks regularly. When you put your offensive line in I'd be interested, Eric, and you may know this. I don't know this. Where is the grades? So an offensive lineman is graded based on what? if I give up if you get by me and you're hurrying my quarterback, if you sack my quarterback, what is the offensive line, PFF or any other grades? What are they based off of?
So in pass blocking, it's the amount of time that they win a block. So win a block is holding your guy for 3 minutes, giving your quarterback time, versus the amount of time it takes to pressure the quarterback. So for a tackle, if a tackle is giving up pressure in 1.5 sacks, long day, fellas, 1.5 seconds. Then he's getting a poor grade. But if he's holding up his guy for 3 seconds or longer, he's winning. Run blocking, there's pancake blocks. There's a couple different factors based on the run game. If they do a dive play and your guard pushes your guy 3 or 4 yards down the field, he's got a pretty high grade. Ideally, I don't disagree that he's got the weapons. I don't know about the offensive line yet. I guess we'll find out. But it also takes the guy's mentality. Is what kind of guy are you getting that's coming into your locker room, and what's his mindset? If his mindset is, I'm the best and I don't got to work at this, he's going to suck.
We saw that with Jamarcus Russell, right? And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And my point about the line is this. And again, I'm not saying Chicago's line is great. But if I take a guy like Tyler Badgett or whatever his name is, and I can say that I get sacked once every 29 dropbacks when I'm this guy, but I put Justin Fields in and I get sacked once every 8 dropbacks. There's a significant difference. Huh?
What's the play calling?
Well, sure. Look, there's a million variables that you put into that. Obviously, the Badgett play calling is very vanilla. So it's get the ball out. He threw more interceptions than Fields, and not more, but ratio-wise, right? 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions versus Fields. I'll give that to him. And this is not a indictment on anybody, but it's me saying, hey, offensive line, if I'm able to let this quarterback drop back 8 times, I'm not going to my left, I'm not going to my right, and I'm getting sacked every 29 times. You would figure if Justin Fields did the same, it would probably be the same result, right? I mean, as far as if I just drop back, read my reads, throw it to my first or second read, Justin Fields indecision, and oh, by the way, desire to run once I can't get my first, right? So the problem is Justin Fields holds the ball too long. All these things, and your offensive line is graded based on how many times he's been hit, but he's getting hit outside the hashes. If I'm guarding or blocking, I'm blocking unless the play call is right, like we're going to slide to the right, then I'm going to block to the right, or block to the left to keep my quarterback open. But the reality is most of the time he's just making shit up as he goes. And I as a center, left tackle, or right guard, I don't know where this dude went, right? And therefore I'm blocking this way and he's over here, and that's why the guy gets sacked. I say that to say this. Because they're 2 different quarterbacks, Fields and Caleb Williams, we'll see how Caleb Williams gets in there and do it. And again, there is no saying that he's going to come and become the guy, right? But he's set up for success based on the skill set players they put around him. Now, if the offense, they've addressed the offensive line for 3 straight years. I know that people are like, they didn't do anything to the line. They have addressed the offensive line through free agency and the draft for 3 straight years. To me, this is very Pittsburgh Steelers-esque. And I say that, Eric, because before I knew you, I've got Steelers fans. Between Cerny, Greg, a lot of my Steelers fans. They from Villanueva to when they were like, I wish this dude would leave. I love that guy, by the way. I got to meet him in real life too. But there was a lot of they were continually plugging new people into that line. It was steadily Swiss cheese. The only offensive line you were worse than 3 years ago was the Miami Dolphins, which was historically bad, and you were 31. And you've done some things to improve, but you've been working on it steadily for 4 or 5 years. We'll see if now's the right mix. I'm saying the same thing with Chicago. You can mix and match and throw people in and hope that they fit, but at the end of the day, it doesn't always equate to success. I just think that what they have from a skill set perspective, it sets Caleb Williams in to have weapons to use. Now, if an offensive line is Swiss cheese, then it's irrelevant because the run can't happen and he can't stand up. And then we'll see. But I think they've done a good job addressing.
So yeah, I gotta go take Bailey's girlfriend home. So I'm gonna hop off here.
Oh, Bailey's got a girlfriend at the house. Watch out, Bailey. Look at you, buddy.
Yeah, she's over all the time. But I gotta run her home because they got school in the morning. So hey, look, I don't disagree. I guess it all depends on what quarterback has the right mindset when he walks into the building, and what he's willing to work on, and what he's willing to, how he takes constructive coaching, how he takes, hey, you need to do this better and you need to do that better. Ideally, if they've got the right attitude, will over skill, right? You can have the most skilled guy. You can have DeMarcus Russell, who can throw 90 yards, but if he's doesn't have the will, the skill don't mean a damn thing. So it's really hard seeing what's in a man's heart until the opportunity comes and it presents itself, and then what's in their heart shows.
I also think losing does that too, right? And we'll see. Caleb Williams isn't used to losing, so if he loses, we'll see if he can keep that head on his shoulders.
But all right, boys, have a good night.
All right, brother. Hey, be good, man. We'll see you later. Tell Bailey we said later.
Later.
All right, we're gonna talk bad about Eric now for the next hour. Right before, I know he heard it too, Eric, and we watched the show. So we're not gonna talk bad about it. All right, so look, let's we'll wrap this up. But Dave, so let's actually talk real quick about the rest of the draft. Well, I mean, look, man, I've seen some of the grades for some of these teams. I don't like. Who do you think had like the best draft? Like, I mean, last year was easy. We're like, man, Detroit killed this stuff.
Well, I mean, I do look at Pittsburgh's draft, and I thought it was an excellent draft in terms of their needs. Okay, I think Chicago addressed needs, and they had 5 draft picks, which again is hard to grade on 5 draft picks, but they hit what they needed. I think I love the fact that Miami got Chop Robinson. I think going into the season, knowing that Jalen Phillips and Brandon Chubb probably not going to be there for the first half of the year, realizing what they needed to get done, I thought they had a pretty decent draft. I actually liked New England's draft, and I liked the fact, and this is, again, something that I talked about with the quarterbacks that nobody wanted to agree with me about, but not only did New England take Drake May in this draft at number 3, they doubled down and then took Joe Milton, who is going to be a project, but again, you are doubling down on the fact of that position, knowing what happened in the last years of Bill Belichick, knowing that you had Mac Jones and then had to bring in Bailey Zappi, and neither one of those were the answer. You have 2 quarterbacks now on that roster, along with Bailey Zappi. You have the ability to have Joe Milton sit behind them. And if if Drake May is not the answer, you might have somebody waiting in the wings. So I think they did good. I don't want to sound like a homer because I think I like what Buffalo did moving down for cap space. Again, I think the one head scratcher that me and you talked about was the defensive tackle in round 3. I really wish they would have gone offensive tackle in round 3 because, again, I don't know what they're going to do with Spencer Brown when his contract, I think it's up this year. And with the fact that they have the cap space that they have, I don't know if I would necessarily want to spend that money on a Spencer Brown. I would have rather had a developmental tackle come in and, be ready to go if they moved on from Spencer Brown. Again, I'm also in the conviction of having teams have players waiting in the wings to come out and be able to do. I loved their draft pick of Spencer Van Pran, the center. Him getting him in the 5th round or 4th round, which I think was the 4th, maybe 4th or 5th, but him being available back there and being able to get that center, a huge get for Buffalo. And I'm gonna quote the PFF from Eric. That PFF called that the steal of the draft. I just want to say, especially if he ends up being the starting center, it was a steal of the draft. It's a potential steal, but I'm not being a homer.
So so all that sounds good, man. I don't disagree. I think Pittsburgh had a hell of a draft. Actually, as much as I talk nonsense to Eric, I mean, of course, they had a good draft. They addressed needs and they got good people to do it, right? I mean, but again, these are all guesses. We'll see how they turn out on the field. But I think they did well. I think New England did well. I think one of the biggest head scratchers for me, and it will stay this way. I mean, there's 2 head scratchers. The Seahawks, they had a good draft. But it's really interesting as you start to see new personnel, right? So Pete Carroll's gone after 85 years in Seattle. Obviously, Belichick's gone with the Patriots. To see how they kind of changed their philosophy of drafting. But the Seahawks was really interesting to me. They drafted in the seven picks or 8 picks they had. I can't remember how many they had. I think it was eight or nine, actually, to be honest. I don't remember.
8.
No skill set, no skill players. Not one. They addressed offensive line significantly. They got a defensive back at one of the picks, and they got, I think, a defensive tackle or something like that.
Yeah, they took Byron Murphy.
But there was not a single receiver, tight end, running back, nothing. So
they did take a tight end in round 4. They took AJ Barner.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Well, tight end isn't skill anyway. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. They are. It is. I didn't see that, but I thought it was still interesting that they're satisfied with. I mean, obviously Geno's there, and they brought in Sam Howell from a quarterback position. They're happy with their run game, and obviously, DK Metcalf's there, but the rest of the guys over there getting old, and they're not really addressing any of the receiver stuff. So it's just interesting to me. The other head scratcher to me, probably more so than anything. I mean, I know that there was a lot of picks. There was. Let me see. I'm going to count the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it took until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The Los Angeles Rams are not who I wanted to talk about. This team, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 picks. And they addressed.
Who's that? The Rams?
This is the Chargers.
Oh,
their number 1 pick was Alt. Not a bad pick. They needed a lot of stuff, and he's the best available right there. Right? You got to. I know you got to take that. But they picked a receiver in the second round right after that, and it was McConkey, right?
Mm.
And I'm not saying nothing bad about this guy. He's a slot receiver. I know you got Quentin Johnson. I get that. You let Mike Williams and you let Keenan Allen walk, and you go and you get in your second round. You got a slot guy, and then you address the receiving pick in your last 2 picks, which is Brendan Rice, Jerry's son, and then Cornelius Johnson with 225 and 253. At pick 34, do you know how many receivers were left? A lot. And they were better available than McConkey. I mean. You need someone to stretch the field. You need a skill receiver. And, oh, by the way, you probably could have – anyway, it's crazy to me that that's who they went for. We'll see how it works out for him. I like the guy. But he's a Wes Welker, a Tony Amendola, Julian Edelman type guy. Herbert's got to be pissed, bro. If I'm him, I got to be like, you guys completely pulled away my team. They haven't paid Herbert yet, have they?
No, not yet.
Well, let's see what happens.
Jeff, I gotta tell you, my biggest head scratcher draft, Dallas. I don't know what the hell they are doing. They got
graded high.
They got an offensive tackle and an edge rusher to go
They got all the offense. They bought off offensive lines all the way through.
They did nothing to help CeeDee Lamb. They drafted Ryan Forney in the 6th round, pick 40, 216. And defensive tackle, yeah, they got a linebacker in the 3rd, but it was guard, tackle. I mean, they're rebuilding their entire offensive line, and I get the fact that you need offensive linemen, and they got Zeke Elliott, but they have nobody of consequence to help take any pressure off of Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb. They let Michael Gallup walk. They got Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. And now you bring in Michael Forney in the 5th. And I don't know anything about Forney. He could be a great guy. He could be a great receiver.
Hey, you know what I just thought of, man? So let me just put this out there. I know KD's no longer watching. I'll have to cut this out and put it there for him. So Baltimore gets an A- in their draft. And it's funny to me because, of course, Devontae Walker goes in the 4th round, which is great. Family is excited, got to talk to him, and I'm excited for the young man. It's so wonderful to hear that. But what's funny is I didn't even put this 2 and 2 together until I just looked at Baltimore's draft list. Wiggins went number 1 to Baltimore. Their first pick was Wiggins.
Mm-hmm.
Those two played against each other. South Carolina, North Carolina, or not South Carolina, Clemson and North Carolina. There was a big hype leading up to their battle, and they're on the same team. But it's interesting to me to look at, again, another draft in which players that should have gone, would have gone, could have gone, and didn't go end up falling to the Baltimore Ravens. I think the two teams that pissed me off more in the draft just based on the luck of the draw is Baltimore and Philly. Right? Philly and Baltimore just happen to get these players that you're like, well, why? Or they just pick the right players that are available. But the fact that they got Wiggins to strengthen their defensive back, that's great. They also did it again and when they got TJ Tampa out of Iowa, which is phenomenal. And then they got they strengthened up the line, but they picked up the Penn State linebacker, Adisa, whatever his last name is, Isaac. That's great. Devontae Walker, Tez Walker is going to do great alongside of Zay Flowers and then with Mark Andrews. I mean, it's going to be nice to know that Lamar Jackson's got some weapons to use. And oh, by the way, they have to be respectful of those weapons because I don't know if you remember this or not, but they picked up this dude named Derrick Henry, which regardless of what the past Lamar Jackson, and I know I'm the number one hater of Lamar Jackson. I get it. And I talk about the fact that receivers don't want to go there because they don't. I mean, they really don't because it doesn't bolster their numbers to get bolstered contracts unless they're at the end of the year and they want to try to win a championship, though they haven't been to one. But when you add the dimension of a back like Henry, the ability for Lamar Jackson to get outside the pocket, and then you have a Tez Walker and Zay Flowers, and they re-signed what's his face, Bateman,
yeah,
man. That team is, and then by the way, I didn't even mention Likely. It's crazy,
right? Well, and the worst part, like you said, I'll talk about Philly. They get Quinion Mitchell, and then they go and then Cooper DeJean, who is slated to go like at pick 16, falls to them at pick 40. I mean, give me a break. I mean, it is unfathomable that team just has high skill players just fall into their lap. I mean, Philadelphia killed this draft. I mean, they really did. They end up with who? Let's see. Yeah, Quinion Mitchell, DeJean. Then they go out and get the edge rusher Hunt. Then they get a running back in Will Shipley to go behind to be the backup to
They got another Trotter. They got another Trotter.
Yeah, they got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in the 5th round. I couldn't believe it. Then Johnny Wilson, another wide receiver. Man, this team just fall.
Hey, listen.
I don't know if they get this. It's amazing to me some of the talent that falls to them.
It is. Hey, but here's something interesting, man, and this is this stuff. When I watched, in the Big Ten, I know Jay's still here, so I talk nonsense about the Big Ten. I'm not looking for a skill set player coming out of the Big Ten. I mean, if you get one or two every once in a while, it's cool. I mean, Harrison Jr. Should be an interesting guy. I would like to see him become what his pops was because I love his dad. Right, he's one of my favorite receivers of all time, just based on the fact that he worked his ass off, scored touchdowns, didn't say nothing. You never heard from that dude. I mean, you heard about it after retiring. He shot up whatever it was, a car wash or whatever. Anyway, but you get good offensive linemen out of the Big Ten. And when you look at these, I mean, even and some defensive linemen for the most part, and a couple linebackers here and there. But offensive line is stout in the Big Ten. And I'll tell you, watching some of those players fall, they're going to make some noise. I was upset. I mean, Cooper DeJean, I'd like to see Buffalo pick him up. But he is, Sean. That's exactly what he's doing.
No, I had a draft pick.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing a fantasy draft?
Yeah.
In April because or May 1st because you're going to play some.
I got my first 2 picks were Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas.
Listen, just so you know, the greatest QB played at Tennessee, which is an SEC school. I know that you think that Tom Brady's that's just foolishness. But anyway, all right, Davey, that's all I got. I'm going to go look at my daughter's tooth.
Sure. All right.
Anyway, hey, we'll talk soon, guys. All y'all be good. Jay, thanks for hanging out. Sean, good to see you. Sorry.
By the way, Tooth Fairy, I lost my filling, so you want to send some? I got Cash App or Venmo. You can Tooth Fairy me.
I already told you what you could do.
I'll put my phone under the pillow, see what comes. Come on, I'll shut up, Jeff. I lost my filling. I'll send everybody my Cash App, and I'll keep my phone under the pillow, so I'll expect money there in the morning because I lost a tooth. So see what happens. Anyway, shut up.
Later, guys.
Hey,
I'm just gonna turn it off because
just turn it off, man. Just go.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Boom.